Yvonne. And hello, everyone from all around the world. Yvonne, thank you. I have been on here ever since we started Al-Anon Without Borders, and I have loved it. Thank you, Joyce, for having the confidence in me to recommend me to Yvonne. My knees have been knocking, my heart's pounding, but I said a prayer this morning, and Joyce was my prayer partner, and we just asked God to step in. Someone said, I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And I said, I can't wait to hear what God has to say either. So, with that, I'm just going to tell you a little about myself. I am in the Worldwide Fellowship of Al-Anon Alateen. I do have a home group. It's called the Church to Change Group, and it is in Missouri City, Texas. And I am the oldest of six. And I didn't take on the responsibility of being responsible for my siblings. I was told to take care of my siblings. So, at a very early age, I learned how to give directions, give instructions. I learned how to beat their butts when they didn't do as I told them to do. I learned how to cook. I learned how to do all that because I was the oldest. And that's what we did in our family. And as I grew up and I watched my mom and my dad, and let me tell you, my dad didn't, he lived with us for a while. My dad was stricken with polio in the 50s. And when he was stricken with polio, that left my mom with six children, and she had put him in a nursing home. So in our household, we didn't grow up with alcoholism in our home. But in my dad's family, he's the youngest of 14 children. And of those 14 children, most of them were alcoholics. And my dad's sisters were very beautiful, beautiful women, but they were alcoholics, and their husbands were alcoholics. And when they would get drunk, they would fight. And the first thing the men did when they fought was they would beat them in the face. They would beat them in the face. And my dad's siblings, they all died of alcoholism. On my mom's side of the family, it wasn't so much alcohol, and my mom's family was very well known, was its five boys, and they were very well known. But they were well known in the community because they provided other community services. Now, if you all don't know what that is, then after staying and listening to my story for a while, you'll figure it out. I remember going to church all the time, and in my family, you couldn't go anywhere if you did not go to church. I hated church. I hated going sitting and listening to the preacher. I hated all that because if we didn't go to church, we couldn't go anywhere, and I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait until I got old enough where I never had to go to church again. So when I graduated from high school, I did not go to church anymore. What a relief. Because the only thing I heard was I was going to go to hell. I was going to go to hell if I didn't do this. I was going to go to hell if I didn't do that. And I'm like, I'm going to have fun. I'm going to go to hell anyway, so I'm going to have fun going to hell. And I did. I enjoyed life. Well, as I went on, and when I left school, when I finished school, I went back home and I lived with my mom. I had a son, and it was time to move into my own place. And what I did was I moved to the southwest side of town. I'm a native Houstonian. I have to tell you, I was born in Houston. I grew up in Houston. My mother's a Houstonian. My dad's Houstonian. We're native Houstonians. So what I did, I just moved from the north side to the southwest side. And when you move to the southwest side of Houston back in the 70s, that means you come up a little bit in status. So in the apartment complex that I moved into, it was me and my son. And that summer, a young couple moved in. Now, this young couple moved from Kingsville, Texas, and she was pregnant. And we got to be friends, really good friends, and we gave her a baby shower. Now, at this baby shower, we live right next door. We shared this apartment porch. So I went back to check on my son, and the to see because I left him in the house. And then when I went back to her apartment, I walked in and there was this guy sitting in there and he had bloodshot eyes, had cowboy boots on, had a big dirty cowboy hat on. He looked at me and he said, "Hey, you come here." And I looked at him. I said, "Oh, no, 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 no." See, my men, they wore three-piece suits. They had shiny shoes. They was dressed real nice, educated. That's what I like. That's how I like my men. And he did not fit the picture. And he kept saying, "Come here." I'm like, "Oh no." Well, little did I know, he actually came back over and he met my son. He had a chance to meet my son. And my son thought he was the best thing he had ever met. Now, mind you, my son never liked anybody I dated. Nobody. But when he met this man, he used to say to me, "Oh, I like CT. Why don't you date him?" I'm like, "I don't like CT. He's a good guy." And my son would always ask me, "Why don't I date CT? He's a good guy." And I just, "I don't like him." Because remember, he didn't wear a three-piece suit. He didn't wear shiny shoes. He he didn't fit the he did not fit the mold. And I want to tell you, for the women who's out there and they're looking for a husband or whatever, and you have children, don't let your child pick your man, okay? That's all I'm saying. Don't let him pick your man. Well, 38 years later, of course, still me and CT. We get married. We get married. We have a daughter, and we buy a house. Oh, we bought a house, and I thought it was my dream home. And we moved into this house. We had a housewarming party, and we invited our friends, and CT invited his friends. And one of his friends, when he came there, he looked around the house. He looked at me. He says, "You know, Mattie, it's a really nice house. You won't have it long." How dare he say that to me? Little did I know how right he was. You see, one day I came home. We had no lights. Another day I came home. We had no gas. Another time I came home, we had no water. One time I came home, we had no lights, no gas, no water at all. I put him out. And you know, when I put him out, you know who took him in? My mom gave him a place to stay. Now, let me tell you, that caused a lot of resentment for me and my mom. And for me to have resentment toward my mom, that was easy to do because that's what I learned growing up. My mom didn't talk to you if she made her mad. You didn't exist. And that was just the norm. So for me not to talk to my mom, that was easy. Because see, she was my mom. How dare she take him in? Now, one time did she ask, "How were we doing?" I'm her daughter, her grandchildren. She never asked, "How are you doing? What's going on?" She didn't ask, but she took him in. So them 10 years I didn't talk to her, and that's how long it was. 10 years I did not talk to my mom. I was perfectly okay. But of course, CT and I got back together. We got back together because he said he would do better. And for a while he did, but that didn't take long. He didn't stay better long because one day I came home from work and they was, and I just looked at him. But one day I was sitting in the house and I'm looking at TV, and I had been watching TV a lot. And by this time, it's in the 80s, and the um, cable TV had come out, and the Lifetime channel came out. And they had this movie out called The Burning Bed. And every time that movie came on, I watched that movie. I love that movie. Well, one day CT came home and he was loaded. And of course, I got in his face doing what I normally do, telling him about himself. And he had the nerve to push me. He pushed me so hard, I slid across that room. Now, mind you, in my family, men did not, and on my mom's side of the family, men did not hit the women. Men did not put their hands on the women on my mom's side of the family. So I had never had a man to hit me, nor push me for that matter. Now, mind you, I told you, I grew up in Fifth Ward, grew up in the projects. I didn't tell you that. And in the projects, growing up, we fought. And fighting was not something that we were afraid to do. That was survival skills. And I was doing that very well. But I had gotten a little education and I had stopped doing these things. I stopped living like that. But this was different for me because, see, growing up in the projects, I never knew what it was like to have no lights, no gas, no water. I never knew what it was like. But living married, and between the two of us, we should have been living the highs of the high, and we was living the lowest of the low. But this particular day, when he came home and I got in his face, he pushed me, and he pushed me really hard. Now, mind you, when he did, I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I got up. I fixed my clothes. I went and sit on the sofa. I lit a cigarette, and I turned the TV on. And I sit there, and I waited until I heard him snoring. And as he was snoring, I went in the garage, and I got the lighter fluid, and I walked back into that bedroom, and I poured it all over him. And I stood in that room with a cigarette lighter and told him to wake his blank, blank, blank up and tell me why I shouldn't send him straight to hell. My son heard all of this, and my son came and he looked at me and he said, if you kill him, we won't have anybody. But let me just tell you a little bit before I put that lighter fluid on him. I was obsessed with how to kill CT. My sister's a police officer, my nephew's a police officer, my cousin's a police officer, all of them are police officers. And I used to call my sister and I say, Pumpkin, if I find some cocaine and mix it with red poison and put it in the bathroom and CT take it and die, will I go to jail? She said, yep, you're going to jail. I say, dang, can't go to jail. That's the one thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to go to jail. And I couldn't figure out how to kill him without going to jail. You know, one of the things I understand is I understand rage very well. I learned how to do that, and I was raging all the time. I would go to work, and I would make me a to-do list. Every day at work, I make my to-do list. And at the end of the day, at 5 o'clock, I had to get off from work because I had to go home and kill CT. That's some crazy insanity. But if you would have asked me then, I would have told you I'm not crazy. This man is ruining my life. He's ruined our lives. We are not supposed to live like this. But that day that I put that fluid on CT, that lighter fluid on CT, and stood there with that cigarette lighter and telling him to wake up and tell me why I shouldn't send him to hell, I knew then that I needed to leave. I needed to leave. And I called my girlfriend. I said, you know, I got to go because if I don't leave, I'm going to kill CT and I'm going to go to jail. So I went looking for a place to live. Now, mind you, my credit's bad. I don't have much money in the bank at all. But I went looking for a place to live. And let me tell you, one thing I can tell you today, I believe in angels, angels, angels everywhere. Because, see, I found a house and it had a for sale sign in it, the front of it. And I called that number. And this man answered the phone. Now, mind you, I'm not a woman who shed tears. We didn't cry. Nope, we didn't cry. And I didn't cry doing any of this stuff going on in my marriage. Only thing I did was I would get more angrier and more angrier and more angrier. But when I called this number, this man answered the phone. I broke down and I boohooed and I told him everything that was going on with me. And he listened. And what he said to me, he says, Miss Thomas, I'll make an appointment. And he did. He made an appointment for me to meet him at his office. And it was in the Galleria area on Ralph San Philippi. And I went to that office and I met him. And he had another man there. And I want you to know when I walked out of that office, I was a proud owner of an 1,800 square feet house sitting in the middle of a cul-de-sac with the promise that I would make a payment when I got my next paycheck. Hmm. Can you imagine? I moved, and when I moved and I left that house, because I said if he wasn't there, everything would be okay. If he wasn't there, everything would be okay. But I've moved into my new home, and I'm supposed to be starting my life over again. But I found myself standing in the middle of my living room, screaming to the top of my voice. And you know what? He wasn't even there. He wasn't even there. Now, mind you, he went to treatment. He did. Eventually, he went to treatment the first time he went to treatment. And when he went to treatment, he asked me if we could get back together. And after he got out of treatment 9 months, he did. And while he was in treatment, we had to go to counseling, and we went to some Al-Anon meetings. And when I went to those Al-Anon meetings, only thing I heard was women complaining and crying about how they want to commit suicide. Now, mind you, I couldn't get with that suicide thing. I never wanted to hurt myself. And after, I don't know how many women had shared about just how they wanted to kill themselves. I raised my hand, and he called on me. And the only thing I could say was, I can understand you want to kill yourself. Kill him. Just kill him. That's all I could think about. Kill him, not kill myself. Oh no. Mm-mm. Even after that, and him being sober, of course he relapsed. Well, when he relapsed, he had to go because see, this time I had a house, and he had to go, and he did. And I want you to know, CT and I was separated for 3 years, and during those 3 years, he went to treatment again, and um, and he got sober. He got sober. How about that? He got sober, and he couldn't get sober for us, but we're separated. He got sober. Well, after being sober for 3 years, he decided that he needed his family back. So what he did, it was my birthday, like it is coming up right now, and he came to my house. He says, Mattie, he says, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. And he comes and he says, I've been sober for 3 years now. And you're the one who went through all the pain. You're the one who went through all of this. And if anyone should share this recovery and this sobriety that I'm going through, it should be you. And he had a birthday present for me. He bought me a beautiful emerald and diamond ring, and he gave it to me. And I want you to know he invited me on a date that night. I told him I had to think about it, but I had to think about it. So, and I told him I let him know. So I rushed over to my girlfriend's house, and her mom was in town, and I call her Mama D because I needed to talk to a woman who had a husband and who had been through some stuff. Because for me, a single woman can't tell me how to be married. So I talked to Mama D, and she said, you know, Mattie, y'all not divorced. He's your husband. If you want to go to date with him, that's your business. So I said, okay. So I called him up, and he answered the phone like this, hello? I said, hi. I said, we have a date. He says, yeah. I said, okay, I'll be over there. I hung the phone up and I told Mom, I said, he got a woman over there. She said, no, man. I said, oh, yes, she does. So I go home. I get all cute. I go over to his apartment and I knock on the door. He comes to the door. He opens it up, lights low, music soft, and she sitting on the sofa. But it was okay because, see, I was in a relationship too. And I had prayed that God give me a man who didn't drink, who didn't do drugs, and that's all I wanted was a good man. And I met this guy, really good guy. I can't say anything negative about him. He's a really good guy. He didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, and he cared for me deeply. He did. But every time he would do something, and he'd look at me, he says, Matt, everything I do is never enough. It's never enough. Now, one thing I have to tell you, he was a good guy, but my God, he was boring. That's how it was too. It was so boring. But he was a good guy. But anyway, so it was okay that she was there. But he had invited me on a date. So I walk in, I look at her and I say, hi, my name's Mattie. And I take a seat. And I do a little chit chat with her. She asked me if I wanted something to drink. I told him I have some water. And he did. He brought the water. And I took a sip and I looked at him and I said, CT, we need to walk her to her car because we have a date. And we did. We walked into her car and we went on our date. CT's sponsor had told him he needed to date me. If we were to get back together, he needed to date me. And we did. We dated. And the thing of it is, we need to date because see, he was sober, and we hadn't lived together in 3 years. I'm living my life. He's living his. However, we have a daughter. We have 2 children, my son and my daughter. And he had a relationship with them. So we still had our children, but we weren't together. After dating about 6 months, we decided that we can try this marriage again. And we did. Every time something came up, it brought back old memories. And I would just go, if you hadn't done this, we would have been here. This is where we should have been. This was my behavior all the time. And she used to tell me, Maddie, why don't you talk to somebody? And he would get phone numbers of people in Al-Anon, and he'd bring them to me. So finally, one day I did call her, and she asked me what was my part. What's my part? And I told her how wonderful I was, but that's not what she was talking about. And of course, I didn't call her again. Well, she invited me to go to a conference, and it was a CETA conference, Southeast Texas AA conference, District 90. And I did. I went to that conference, and they had Al-Anon meetings at their conference. So I decided, well, I'll go to some Al-Anon meetings. So I did. I went to these meetings, and in those meetings, people were laughing. Now, one time that I hear them talk about their loved one, their husband, their child, their wife, none of that. I heard them talk about themselves and what they were doing for them. And I'm like, okay. It was nothing like when I was first introduced to Al-Anon. I'm like, okay, I need to understand this. Because, see, I had a lot of anger issues. I had a lot of unresolved issues that I needed to work on. So when I get back to Houston, I decided I'd find me an Al-Anon meeting. And I needed an Al-Anon meeting like the one that I had at the conference. So I went started going to different Al-Anon meetings. But the thing of it is, CT is a very personable person. So every place that I went to an Al-Anon meeting, they also had an AA meeting, and they knew him, and they would tell me how wonderful he was. I'm like, can't go there. So I finally went to the Gulf Coast Club. And at the Gulf Coast Club, those the women there had been there for some 25 years, been in the fellowship. And not one person said how wonderful CT was. But it was something about that meeting. I was not really welcome at that meeting. I'll tell you what happened. They needed a. I had been going to this meeting now for about maybe 6 months or so, and they needed a secretary. Well, nobody had ever. The meeting had been in existence for a long time. They hadn't had a secretary, so I volunteered. And they looked at each other and they said, "Okay." But the very next morning, at 8 o'clock a.m., I'll never forget, 8 o'clock a.m., I get a phone call telling me I could not be the secretary and why I couldn't be the secretary. Most of the meetings that I went to, they were welcoming, all of that. At this particular meeting, I didn't get hugs, I didn't get welcoming, I didn't get anything. What I realized was they didn't want me there. I wasn't welcome at that meeting. And I realized the reason I wasn't welcome because my skin was black. And I sit back, I looked all around at them, and I said to myself, I said, self, they're gonna have to look at this black face because I ain't going nowhere. And every time they had a meeting, I showed up and I sit there. Every time they had a meeting on Sunday, I was there. They had a meeting on Wednesday, I was there. They had a meeting on Saturday, I was there. They had to look at this face. What I realized today, I stayed for all the wrong reasons. But for me, they turned out to be the right reasons. Because, see, what I heard, I needed to understand this program of Al-Anon. I needed to understand this fellowship. I needed to understand this serenity that they talked about. I needed some peace because I'm looking good on the outside, but I'm dying on the inside. I needed to get some peace. And these women, they had that peace. They didn't talk about their loved ones at all. They talked about themselves. They talked about what they were doing for themselves. And I needed to understand, how do I get there? And I stayed. They talked about those steps. And they had step on Wednesdays. I went on Wednesdays because Wednesday was the step meeting night. So I needed to understand those steps. And I stayed there. Eventually, one person, and her name was Esther, and she's deceased now. And Esther was a paraplegic. Eventually, Esther welcomed me in that group because she saw I wasn't going anywhere, that's for sure. So I guess she said, may as well welcome her. And I stayed. And I still needed to understand those steps, but I need a sponsor. And I didn't get one. So I decided I could work these steps by myself. I'm going to these meetings. I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I can read. I can work these steps by myself. I don't recommend you do that. Because when I worked those steps, I want you to know how wonderful I was, how responsible I am. I could tell you all that. Well, eventually I did get a sponsor. I went to a lot of meetings around the city of Houston, and eventually I did get a sponsor. And when I got a sponsor and I started working the steps, I remember, and my sponsor took me through the steps this way. She took steps 1, 2, and 3. And even though she said, I can't, he can, I think I'll let him, she says, we're going to say giving up. See, for me, things have to be simple. They have to be simple. And so step 1, 2, and 3, giving up. She says, Mattie, you know right now that you cannot control the alcohol. She says, and really, you can't control him. She says, what happens to me? She says, what happens to you when you try to control him? And I started telling her how I get angry, frustrated, how I get the headaches, the blood pressure goes up. She says, exactly. Your life becomes unmanageable. She said I had to find the God of my understanding. Hmm. I had to learn to have faith. I had to learn to acknowledge that I had no control over anything. I had to accept the fact that there is a God. And what's faith? So, something I can't touch, I can't feel, I can't see, but I can feel it. Hmm. Today I can tell you I believe there is a God. And as I go on, I'll tell you why. When I came to step 4, 5, and 6, with step 4, I told myself how wonderful I was. But she did, and we did my step work through the path to recovery. And she made me do a grid using the 4 M's out of path to recovery. And it's on page 40: management, martyrdom, manipulation, and mothering. And when I put those down and I'm looking at my behavior and who I'm doing this to, not treating my husband as if he was one of the kids. I treated him because as if he was one of the kids because I was the one being responsible. Even though he had a job, he wasn't doing what he was supposed to do as the husband. So he was a kid. I had to tell him what to do, when to do it, and if he didn't do it, I had to punish him too. And if he didn't do it, oh, more poor me. And if he didn't do it the way I thought he should do it, I'd get in there and tell him how it should be done. Hmm. When I looked at that behavior, and I'm like, I know where it came from. I learned this growing up. This is what I saw my mom do. This is what I saw the women in my family do. We took responsibility. We were the head of the house, even though there were men there. But in my household, my dad was in a nursing home. So my mom was the head of the house and she told us what to do. So this is what I learned. I want you to know it's hell matured in public because that's what I had to do. I had to learn to mature in public. I had a lot of behaviors I needed to unlearn. I shared all this with my sponsor. One of the things that I was really scared about of sharing is I didn't want to be judged about my behavior because I wasn't proud of the fact of how I treated CT. I wasn't proud of the fact of putting the lighter fluid on him and saying I need to burn him up. I was not proud of any of that, but I realized I had crossed the line too. As I continued to work my steps, and step 4, 5, and 6, it says owning up. That's why she had me do those 4 M's. I had to own up to my behavior. I remember my children. I'm not the alcoholic, but my children used to say, I don't want to stay home with her. You're going to leave us and you're going to leave us with her. That hurt. That hurt a lot because I wasn't the alcoholic. I thought I was the one being responsible. But when I look at my behavior toward my children, they saw me rage. They never saw him rage. They saw me take all my frustration out on them. He never did. I realized I had a lot of work to do. Hmm. When I started praying, when I learned to pray, because I didn't know how to pray, I had to learn to pray. My prayers became very simple. First, I had to learn to thank God. So my prayers are thank you, God. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have to say that, and I still say that today. Thank you, God. My prayers are simple. I know, I know today what my triggers are. I know this. I had to make amends, and I had to make amends to my children, and I had to apologize to them for my behavior. For a long time, I let my son hold me hostage. He held me hostage in everything that he wanted. Anything he thought he wanted, he asked for, I did it. I bought cars, I paid rent, I did all of that. And I remember as I worked with my sponsor, and I was sharing all this stuff with her, and we talked about it. A light bulb came on. I needed to let my son know the bank was closed, but also I had to learn how to say no without the hell in front of it. Because every time you ask me something, first say hell no. I had to learn how to say no. And I told her, I said, no, I only know how to be direct. I only know how to be. She says, well, Mattie, stand in the mirror and practice saying no. So I actually stood in the mirror. I say, no, no. I did stuff like that just to keep from saying hell to the no. But when I told my son, and he came and he asked to borrow some money, and I said, no. He said, no. I said, no. He says, well, I said, the bank is closed. He looked at me, he said, well, can you open it again? I wanted to say hell no so bad, but I just said no. I loved it. My daughter, on the other hand, my daughter went to Alateen, and I loved it. She went to Alateen, and that helped her a lot. See, my husband took my daughter to a lot of AA meetings, and she would come home and she smelled like a little smokestack. My mom thought that was the worst thing I could do is that my daughter go to AA meetings with her dad. And I asked her what was so bad about it, and she started. And mind you, now my mom knew nothing about AA, and she knew nothing about Al-Anon, but she knew that my daughter and her granddaughter should not be in those rooms. And I had to let my mom know my daughter got more love in that room than she ever received in our house. As a matter of fact, there was no language in that room that she hadn't heard in our house to her. See, she never held me hostage, but my son did, and I allowed that. So it was time for me to start making up, and I did. Asking God to remove my shortcomings. Now, some of those were survival skills, okay? And I've worked on a lot of my shortcomings. I want you to know I'm not perfect. I'm on this side of the dirt, so I still got some of those shortcomings. But when they raised their ugly head, I knew exactly what I need to do. I have the tools. One of the things that I've learned to do, and I love the Al-Anon do's and don'ts, I had to learn what I enjoy doing for me today. See, when my sponsor asked me, Mattie, tell me, what do you like to do? Tell me I couldn't tell her. I couldn't tell her what I like to do because it had been so long since I had done anything for me. And so I had to step back and I had to think, what did I do? So she asked me, what did you do before you married CT? And when I thought back, what I love to do, I love to read. Oh God, I love a good book. So I started reading again. And yes, I like adventure, I like suspense, I like romance. And let me tell you, if you haven't read all three books of the 50 Shades of Grey, I want you to know that's a good book, okay? I love to bake. And I found that baking takes me to another world. I love music. Oh my God, we used to listen to music, we used to dance, we did all that growing up. And I did all that pre CT, and we did some of that together. But I hadn't been listening to music, I hadn't been baking or anything. So today, what I like to do, I bake and I listen to my music. And when I listen to my music and I'm baking, puts me at peace. It's just something about putting my hands in some dough and just listening to my music, and I'm in another world. And I'm not a professional baker, but I create some really interesting things. I enjoy it. So another tool that I had to work on, I had to work on forgiveness. You see, in my family, you make us mad, we don't forgive you for anything. We take it to our graves. That's all there is to it. But thank God I learned the power of forgiveness because see, I had to learn to forgive my mom. And I did. And it wasn't to let her off the hook. I realized that I carried a lot of anger toward my mom. I had to learn how to forgive CT so I could move forward if this relationship was going to work. I had to forgive him too. But the most important thing that I had to do was forgive my mom. I always say the hardest thing I've ever had to do is accept an apology that was never spoken. My mom never asked for an apology because she always thought she was right. But you know, I've learned in my fellowship, it's okay. I forgave her for me. Because, see, when my mom needed me the most, because she had cancer, and it was time for me to step up and be the daughter that I needed to be, I was able to do that. So when my mom died, I had no regrets. I was at perfect peace. That's one of the beauties I love about this fellowship. I was at perfect peace. Hmm. My son, the one that loves CP so much, hmm, my son, we were on our way to Canada for the ORC, and we were in at the airport when I got in Chicago, waiting to catch a flight to go to Buffalo, New York. Because while we drove across the border, we fly to Buffalo and drive into Canada. And I got this phone call, and it was from my sister. My son had been in an accident. He had hit an 18-wheeler, and he broke almost every bone in his body. And I talked to the doctor, and the doctor told me that go and finish my trip because there was nothing I could do. And when I got to Canada, and I had made a lot of friends up at the ORC, I told them what was going on. And my Al-Anon family and my AA family, they surrounded me, and they was right there with me until we got back to Houston. And when I got back to Houston, I went, my daughter was 9 months pregnant at the time, and she stayed there with my son, her brother, because she said she was his family and she wasn't leaving his side until I got there. She didn't. I stayed. You see, my son, even though he said I'm not an alcoholic, I'm his mom. They say we're not supposed to call somebody else an alcoholic. He's my son. I could call him whatever I wanted to. Because if it looks like a duck, it acts like a duck, it's quacking. And my son was quacking. And on top of that, my son was a type 1 diabetic. So when he hit that 18-wheeler, the doctor told me that he went into a diabetic blackout. And alcohol was involved. Alcohol was involved. My son lived 3 years after that because on April the 20th, 2018, my son said he was tired. My son died. But through all of that, my Al-Anon family was there, and they held me up and my husband up. They said, "Mattie, you don't have to walk this alone." See, I didn't get that kind of love growing up. We didn't get that in our family. You didn't cry. You accept what's going on and you move forward. But in my Al-Anon family, they said, "Mattie, we'll hold you up," and they did. And they were there. They were there for me and my husband both. That's the beauty of this fellowship. I, That's the beauty of this fellowship. I love the hugs. See, in my family, we didn't hug. My mom died, and I don't know what it's like to even have to hug her because she never hugged us. But I've learned that's okay too, because I have a family where I get lots of hugs. This COVID thing is just really killing me because I can't get my hugs, okay? But I know all the virtual hugs we get. I love that. One of the things that I really enjoy, I said, so I decided I love this fellowship. I decided to get involved in service. I love service work. Love it. I started off as a GR. There's this book, and it's when I got busy, I got better. Y'all familiar with it? And I read that book, and I'm like, okay, because they talk about Mattie, we need to put the focus on you. Take the focus off him, put the focus on you. Because I've already told you, find out what you enjoy doing. Start doing it, and that's what I started doing. I'm like, it's something else I need to do. So I decided, okay, I'll start off as a GR. I enjoyed being a GR. I got to go to the district meetings. I enjoyed that. And then after, I'm like, then I became a DR. Oh, I love being a DR. I love being involved in my district. And I want you to know, in District 4, Fort Bend County, because that's what we are, it's 5 counties in District 4, I have to tell you, I'm going to toot our horns. We have the best district ever. If it's something that you think you're proud of, you throw up your hands and say, hey, that's what we do. So, yeah, I have to give shout out to my district. And from the district level, you get to be involved in the area level. What I've realized is, I've heard them say, get in the car. For me, I need to understand everything. In order for me to accept it, I have to understand it. So I used to tell, and Joyce, I hope you don't mind me saying your name. I used to tell Joyce, I need to understand this because I have courses. So can I go? And she said, sure, get in the car. And I started going. She said they're going to the scrub meeting, South Central Regional Delegates meeting. I said, can I go? She says, oh, sure, you can go. You don't have a voice. It's okay. I needed to understand. See, when I got involved in service, that just took my recovery to a whole different level. There's 3 things they talk about the traditions, and Yvonne has done the traditions. She's done the steps. She's done the traditions. She's doing the concepts. And this is what I heard. I heard that the steps keep you from committing suicide. And I want you to know, I ain't about to kill myself. And everybody who knows me know I say I love me some me. 2, they said the traditions keep you from committing homicide. Well, definitely I need to work in traditions because, yes, I can be homicidal. And they say the concepts keep you from committing genocide. I love that. I love that. I say to the newcomer, oh, let me back up. I need to say this before I close. I told you I believe in angels. And I told you about this house that I bought. That house, I decided to sell that house and pay it forward to my nephew. And I did. And so I wanted to thank the man who sold me the house. He basically gave me the house. And I have the deeds to the house and so forth. And I'm trying to find this man. I'm on the internet. I'm trying to find him. I can't find him anywhere. So we have a friend, Robert Tapp, and he's an attorney, and he works in real estate. So I give him this letter, and I tell him I really need to find this man. I want to thank him. I need him to see where my life is today. So he did. And I had to go back and look at all those letters again. And I pulled them up because I wanted to count the dates. It was 6 months he spent looking for the man who sold me that house. And the letter that he sent, he says, Dear Mattie, I have looked I cannot find him nor the attorney that was in the office who signed those papers. It's like they don't exist. You know, I had put God out of my life. I walked away, but God never left me. He put angels in my life to carry me when I thought I was doing it by myself. And it wasn't me, it was God. I realized that there is a God, and He's always been there for me. And I can't do anything but say, thank you, God. I give you the praise. See, my higher power, I call God today. And I say, thank you, God. I give you the praise. I give you the glory. Because He's shown me another way. He brought me to this fellowship, and He put people in this fellowship in my life. And I'm grateful for that. So when you talk about gratitude, I have gratitude. And for the newcomers out there, I say come all the way in, sit all the way down, and stay. Thank you, Yvonne, for giving me this opportunity to share.
Thank you, Mattie. Well, you're not doing anything for me not crying. Thank you so much. You have the